Good evening, everybody. I just want to say thank you to Tendai for giving me the opportunity to share my story and that of my dad, my late father, and mom, and a bit about my family as well. I hope I'll be able to clarify certain issues that some of you might have had questions about all along, and also clear my side of the story as a child, um, living in State House, living with such a high-profile person. Thank you. That's a bit of a difficult question to ask, but anyway, my dad, Canaan Banana, who was he? We are apparently originally from the Sutu tribe, Basotho people from Southern Africa. My grandfather's father was somehow a traditional healer who knew the then Mambo, worked for Mambo at the time. The banana name, it's actually banana, meaning little children. My totem surname is actually Ngube. There's quite a bit of history around why the name banana came about. And then where did he come from? Yeah, well, he's a Zimbabwean. He was born in Zimbabwe himself, but his great grandfather migrated from Lesotho. Where did he come from? He had a very unusual surname. Are you guys originally from Zim Motupo? Yes, we are. Obviously, I was born in Zimbabwe as well, so I'm originally from Zim. He was born in Zimbabwe. He's originally from Zim. But in general, obviously, the Ndebeles had different tribes, just like the Shona people have different tribes, like the Karanga, Manika, Zezuru, etc. But they're called Shona. It's almost similar with the Ndebeles as well. They migrated from Southern Africa to Zimbabwe, so that's the sort of time our lineage came through to Zimbabwe. What else? Yeah, that's about what I can say about the few questions that you've asked. Hi. Naturally, with many of the old school dads, like my dad, they grew up in Christian families where they believed a lot in the Bible. My granddad was very serious Christian. He was actually a prophet as well and a healer. There's a story behind him where he used to go and pray in the mountains, and he actually predicted before the time who that my dad and the other leaders who led Zimbabwe after independence, who was going to be president and who was not going to sit on the top seat. Something which I've been told by my uncle and aunties. So basically, because of that prayer connection of being Christian, he also went to study at Tegwane Mission, and after studying, he decided to become a preacher as well and travel across Zimbabwe. And you can see that by the way us kids were born. I was born in Masvingo, then Fort Victoria. My brother was born in Wange, formerly Wanki, and my younger brother was born in Bulawayo. And my sister, she was born after independence in Harare. All this is because my dad was well-traveled because of his commitment to religion, where he used to go around preaching. And basically, I think that's how he ended up in politics, because he had so much, he used to speak to so many people, and had that reach of having the ability to influence so many people in life. And along the way, he then met other individuals, politicians, and eventually, because he was a priest, like Muzorewa also was a priest, when political parties were banned, they were actually seen as the more favorable people to kind of manage political parties. And he was initially vice president for the ANC when the other political parties were banned. And then eventually later on during the Lancaster House conferences, that's when he crossed over to join ZANU-PF. What other questions are there? My mom, just like him, they met at Tekwane Mission, where she was also studying, and I think it was probably love at first sight. And from then on, they did not spend a lot of time together as such, because my father was quite well traveled. He was hardly around the house, and at times traveled abroad to places like Japan on his religious studies. As for our lives at State House, like I said earlier, my dad was old school. Old school dads, they were quite scary to approach. And what made it more difficult for us to approach him is because we saw him with all these security people around him, and everybody was like scared of him. Older people were scared of him. So it became a bit complicated for us as kids as well to have that dead figure in our lives. Our mother basically played probably both roles, because everything that we faced as young children, she was there for us. When he was in prison, she was always there for us. She had to support the family. She was a teacher, and in his absence, she had to make sure we had a plate of food. So we were much closer to our mom than our dad, because he was always traveling for his religious teachings, and later for his political duties as a president. So it was quite a complex situation. But I mean, occasionally, most of the time when we would have a chance to talk to him would be over the dinner table when we were eating food, either breakfast, lunch, or supper. But as well, we were taught on how to table manners, how to sit there, because sometimes you'd invite people over for lunch. So we're not really allowed to say much, but sit there and try and act and eat decently. As we grew a little bit older, some of us used to boycott going for the lunches, and maybe just order lunch and have our lunch in our rooms. And because it was more comfortable, you felt like you're not under pressure to behave in a particular way, because we also wanted to feel like children at the same time, because we didn't want to be treated like we are government officials or workers or whatever the case is. So yeah, old school fathers were a bit of a challenge. Even I don't think it's just him as a president, but his generation of fathers were different from what we've been taught to be as fathers to our own kids. I don't really blame them, because I think it's part of our culture, that fear, respect of elders. So it was more reinforced because of his role as the president of the country. So it wasn't easy really to just approach him or go and ask for things from him. At times you have to go through someone else if you needed certain things, because every time you'd go back to ask for, say, school uniform, you'd say, go and see the secretary. So next time you'd know that, let me first go and see the secretary and ask this before I go and see him. So yeah, it was like that. Well, just to add to that, for me personally, I used to look forward to going back to school because I was at boarding school at Churchill, and I felt more free. And because at State House, obviously, you couldn't just go out. There was security, there was soldiers all over the place. You're not allowed to go out without someone accompanying you. So school time was like that's when you get your real freedom to go out, be with your friends, and do whatever you want. When I was a bit older, I used to actually ask. He used to like fishing, so I used to always ask if I could go with him fishing. I think of my brothers, I was the one who was more proactive in trying to get him to be with us as kids as well. So I used to go fishing, and then I started going for uh, soccer practice as well at Morris Depot because that's where he had started his interest in soccer and had created a team at State House called State House Tornadoes. So I would join in the practice as well, and but obviously it was hard for me to break into the main first team. I played a few games with the reserves, though I really tried hard to impress them. I really never made it to the first team anyway. But I think those are moments which I kind of cherish because I felt that was the time I had to spend with him around his activities and for football matches and things like that. It really made me feel good because I felt like at least I'm around with my father and stuff like that. In all honesty, I never really had a chance to ask him about what exactly happened between him and Mzorowa. That video clip that I shared, I only came across it sometime last year when I was just doing research, on his involvement in the Lancaster House talks in Geneva. And from what I gather, from what I've heard from other people who knew him at the time, he fell out with Mzorewa on the grounds that he wanted to negotiate a settlement with Ian Smith, the Zimbabwe Rhodesia scenario, and he was not too keen on that. And obviously, he had spoken to some of the other politicians, Mgomo and Mugabe. They're in Geneva, Switzerland, and basically that's when he switched over. He was also a socialist. He was very socialist driven, and I think ideologically they were a little bit apart with Mzorewa. He saw Mzorewa more of as a soft stance. He had a soft stance approach in negotiating a settlement for a new Zimbabwe. So I would like to think that was basically the main reasons he decided to cross over to the Mugabe camp. I stand corrected. Coincidentally, apparently he told us that he was not aware of what was taking place in Gweru and the Midlands and Matabeleland at the time. Besides obviously getting a few calls from relatives who were saying that they were being harassed by the army. He only took everything seriously when Nkomo came to see him, apparently crying. He said something to him in Ndebele ukuthi mfoka banana sure kwini lokho kwenzakalayo. What has gone wrong with these people. So that's when he took it upon himself to try and get involved. And obviously, since he was close to Mugabe, it was easier for him to sit down with him because they used to meet almost on a weekly basis, every other day, basically. as he was head of state and Mugabe was head of government. So it was more easier for him to cross over on both sides, as he also came from the same region as Nkomo. So yeah, that's how he became one of the main players in the Unity Accord with the late Msipa as well. Yeah, that's about how much I know about how he got involved in the Unity Accord. He obviously became very close to both Nkomo and Mugabe after the Unity Accord, and and later on Nkomo actually went to see him as well when he had those allegations about him in the papers, and asked him, "Kanti bakwenzani laba bantu forward?" So yeah, they did have a brotherly kind of relationship together. Clearly, when finally the Unity Accord was agreed, part of the agreement was obviously to remove the role of the Prime Minister and have the role of an executive president, which meant that he would then step down to make way for the executive president's role. From my own assessment, I think he wasn't too happy about having to, because his term of office had not yet expired, but obviously to ensure that people were united, he also saw the importance of that as a priority over his own selfish needs. So he accepted and stepped down. Not that he could have refused, but he had to just accept it and step down to make way for the executive presidents and the creation of ZANU-PF. On a personal note, I think in thinking about it now, I think it provided for checks and balances. Executive power has not really been used in a very effective manner. I think with the prime minister and presidential role, it kind of provided a separation of powers, and the country was a bit functional at the time during his time in office. The creation of the executive president, giving one individual so much power, I think is part of what affected us. But I mean, obviously, some will argue that countries like China, where there's only a one-party state, they're still quite functional with the one leader on top. And but I think they've got mechanisms on the lower structures to ensure that that person obviously does not abuse their power in any manner. And there has been a change of leadership in China anyway, a smooth change of leadership as well. So there's lessons to be learned. I'm not sure if we can go back to that system, but perhaps we can come up with our own system as Africans, because it looks like every time we try to inherit or copy others, we're not doing so well. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Key political achievements for me was the Unity Accord, obviously stopping the senseless killings of people in the Midlands and Matabeleland areas. And I would also say his starting of Kushinga Pikelela, which was his farm, which he donated, and is now a polytechnic, a government polytechnic. And also his love for sport led to the to Zimbabwean footballer Peter Ndlovu going to Europe, and Benjamin Waruwaru, something which the two footballers seem to have never acknowledged to date. Though my father's young brother who is in communication with one of the footballers has confirmed these details. And yeah, so yeah, he was. I mean, he was known as Zimbabwe's #1 fan. So he made quite a lot of contributions to football in Zimbabwe. After independence, there was a lot of buying of land and all kinds of deals that were going on, which were in breach of the ZANU-PF leadership code. So they were all told to sell their farms because a lot of white people were living at the time. He had saved up because he's not someone who drinks or whatever. So he had saved up enough money to buy a farm in Marondera. And instead of selling, he decided to convert the farm into an agricultural training institute. So basically, yes, he donated the farm. He converted the farm to an agricultural. Government took over the Bushinga Pikelela at a much later stage. I'm not too sure how that went about in terms of the title deeds to the farm. I'm not quite clear because I was still very young at the time. So it's something that I'll probably need to research using the new foundation to find out exactly what transpired, because I was told by my uncle that he had a lot of other stock, like animals like goats and everything at Kushinga Pikelela, which he had left there and, for research purposes, and would go and collect once a year. So I'm not sure what arrangement the college actually had with him after he converted it to a college. It's something which I still need to do research on. From what I know, as someone who was an avid football fan, he had established good connections with some South African contacts, namely Jomo Sono. So what he would do is, if he identified talent in Zimbabwe, he would then talk to Jomo Sono in South Africa to get the person to go there for trials. And after that, Jomo Sono will also, because he was already in the football circles as well, then connect that player to clubs in Europe and the UK. With Peter Ndlovu, I think he facilitated his move with the Makamure guy, if I can remember his name correctly. But I do not really have the finer details as to exactly how those transactions happened, whether he got any kickbacks from it or it was purely for the sake of promoting soccer talent from Zimbabwe. I think the people who could answer those questions are the players themselves, Benjani and Peter. They could say exactly what his role was in terms of the facilitation for them to go over to both South Africa and the UK. In fact, he seemed quite well connected to clubs in Europe as well, because some of the kits which State House Tornadoes used to have were imported kits, football boots and soccer balls, which all came from abroad. I guess with his position, it gave him that leverage to be able to source donations for such things, to support local sport. I wouldn't be in a position to know what exactly happened in terms of the exchange between the outside donors and himself. But yeah, he was very passionate about soccer and wanted a lot of young people to succeed. Well, all I can say in terms of that is that period actually affected not just our family, but extended family as well. More so our mental health, probably right up to now. Some of our own children don't even use the banana surname on social media platforms because of that reference. Because every time there's any story related to anyone with the banana name, the media, whatever, they just bring up the old issues which happened, I don't know how many years ago. Imagine what that does to one's mental capacity. It's very destroying, and I think some people, they don't even think how that affects people connected to that particular individual. I'm not here to defend what happened. He himself went to court and he denied the allegations, but he served his sentence whilst he was still alive, and I believe he paid his dues to society. And I would ask that people respect that and leave it as is. And after all, he's now late. He's met his creator. His kids, his grandkids need to continue with life. And certainly, this whole issue of always bringing it up whenever there's something said, whether it's positive or negative, it's unfair. And people should just stop always using that as a tool to try and silence people who sometimes have some very genuine, um, uh, what can I say, want to do things very sincerely, perhaps contribute to society or to contribute to their own careers. Um, yeah, yeah, that's what I can say in terms of that. It's a sad period, and I think the person who was affected the most was my mother. And I think her leaving the country was to also try and avoid the harassment she was receiving from different people, different corners. And she only came back in her late years because she wanted to retire home peacefully where she was born. Just like most of us who have been raised in Zimbabwe, we want to be part of a Zimbabwe that respects us and gives us a chance to also contribute to its progress. I would also add that that case actually has affected so many other things in our lives. I mean, it's almost, once a person can't even accept who they are, you are not, you feel ashamed of who you are, and like what the kids are doing, changing their names. It's really sad. It's really sad. But I'm proud of who I am. I'm a banana, and I will remain a banana. And I am not my dad. I'm myself. And I just want people to know out there that that was his time, and he served his time, and he made his contribution to this country. There's far more good things that he did for this country than the one thing that they always bring up about him. May his soul rest in peace. We did speak about the issue when he was still alive. We were in the UK at the time, and he came there to see us, and we sat down, and obviously we had to confront the issue, and he had to let us know as kids as well, what exactly had transpired. And according to him, he felt that it was a politically motivated issue. He clearly, I don't know whether it was pride or no pride, but he denied those issues. as pathological lies. And but yeah, it hurt everybody. It hurt everybody, and I'm not sure how each person dealt with it. In Zimbabwe, at the time there was no place one could go for counseling or anything like that. So you can imagine all members of the family, no one actually had an opportunity to be counseled over that whole episode. We had to deal with the issues on our own with the support of friends and some family members. Yeah. When I think about it now, I think my mom did not want me to go into politics, not because she did not believe in my abilities, but because she knew once I go public, these barrage of attacks and insults linked to this, his case would come up again and obviously open the wounds and hurt which they'd tried to so much get rid of all these years. I actually only think about it now, but at the time, obviously, when you're passionate about something, you just want to go ahead with it. But in afterthought, I can see why maybe the reason she never wanted me to go into politics in Zimbabwe. Well, in an exam, this would be the easier part of the exam. At least talking about myself is much easier and simpler than talking about someone else. Who am I? Well, I'm an ordinary citizen. I've learned to be ordinary. Initially, I struggled with the status label. When everybody hears you are banana son, they've such high expectations of you. And as a young person, even if you have a normal job like everybody else, people expect you to dig deep into your pocket and take care of their needs. They actually basically don't believe that as a former president's son, you are a broke person, or you can be broke. They think that somewhere along the line, your family must have been given millions and millions of dollars, which you are now surviving on. Well, that's not the reality with perhaps our family. I don't know of others who've been in the same position. Nathan, well, I grew up in Bulawayo, well, basically more outside the country during my dad's exile, and later returned to Zimbabwe when it was still Rhodesia, and then at independence we moved to Harare. So I grew up in Harare for my early years of my youth, and basically I suspect what the officials at State House were trying to do was to push us towards the way the royal family children were being treated. Like after school, you serve a bit in the army or wherever. So my brother went to serve in the Air Force. I went to serve in the police force. My young brother, I guess, was supposed to go and serve in the army. But by the time he was of age, unfortunately for him, we had left State House. So that whole plan did not work out for him. So yeah, I basically served in the police force, but I didn't stay long. I'll cut long story short because that's all in that profile of mine. Ideologies. Well, I used to be a Democrat in the sense that I wanted to copy paste everything that we read online and from the so-called democratic nations of this world. And even when I went into my political campaign, my push was mostly on pressing for the values that I believed in, like accountability, transparency. Those were the main things that I wanted to see in both my community and the nation of Zimbabwe. But as time went and I learned about how politics truly works, I found that there's a lot of miseducation that we've gone through as a people. Miseducation in that we grew up being taught to value certain value systems which were created by others. Not to say that they are bad, but they make us always admire and always try and replicate what they do, which doesn't always translate to the prosperity that we are all trying to fight to bring about. But anyway, ideologically, I would want to adjust our ideology so that it's more Afrocentric. It deals with the real issues affecting us as Africans, not by reinventing the wheel, but by using the tools of our inherited colonial education system to build value systems that we can call our own as African people. Going into mainstream politics was obviously motivated by people calling me on board, obviously thinking, since you are the former president's son, I'm sure if you speak to people because you've got the right ideas, you speak about accountability and transparency, and there's a lot of corruption in society, people will listen to you, and maybe we can turn a new chapter for our country. So it was like a calling, and I accepted that and felt I needed to play my part. My dad played his part. His focus was on the politics. He was more socialist driven, hence some of the projects that he went into, and I have to carry on as well. In some way, one of us in the family had to carry on and try and keep his legacy alive, and contribute to national development in our own way. I feel our focus should ideally now be more on the economic side, because we've been trying to fix our politics for over 40 years, and somehow it doesn't seem like we're getting it right at the moment. It's become even worse than it was during my father's term. It's very toxic, and everyone is pulling in their own direction. So I ponder sometimes that even if we were to change, and maybe there's a removal of ZANU-PF, how do the new ones come in? They come and change the whole system, and we have to start afresh and build something new. And then what happens when they lose, and then somebody else comes in again, and then we have to change again? I don't know if that politics can work. I believe there should be a time for politics and a time for national development. We should have a common national vision, which everybody agrees to, so that even if one party was to go out of power, the one that comes in just carries on building on, coming up with different strategies to improve on that vision. Africa People Movement is about influencing a change in mindsets, a change in the way we think about the way we do things as African people. It's also about decoloniality, trying to, move ourselves, influence a change in the way people get educated from primary school. We want to see if we can approach education institutions across Africa and to try and change the sort of inherited education system without reinventing the wheel. We believe it's through our education that we have somehow become disconnected from our true value as Africans. We want people to accept who they are and be able to define what values we share as African people, rather than just embrace what we've been taught through this inherited colonial education system, the belief systems that we've inherited. Not to say that we can get rid of Christianity. Christianity, anyway, is part of African religion. But, to make people also not look at traditional African beliefs as a negative, as has been the case in the past. So it's basically finding ways to be innovative in an African context. And this only can be possible if we start having conversations and about what it means to be an African, and make comparisons to, are we really doing this correctly? Is the democratic model that we have the correct one for us? How can we adjust it to work for us? It's really not a case of reinventing the wheel, but really putting in place strategies that can eventually empower Africans. Because even if you look at our education system, it creates workers more than people who become entrepreneurs. If you're an empowered person, I believe you have the ability to create generational wealth. Whereas if you're an educated person, most of the time you get educated to look for a job. So this is where Pan-Africanism comes into place. We don't want job seekers only. We also want people who are innovative and who create generational wealth, which can eradicate poverty in Africa. Currently, we have a South African chapter, but it's been very dormant. You can guess why. From whatever news you read from South Africa, articles shared on social media, the chasing away of other Africans from South Africa, it just tells you what a huge challenge we have in terms of pushing an Afrocentric agenda in South Africa. So we were quickly forced to try and set up structures in Zimbabwe. We've got hubs, what we call hubs in each province in Zimbabwe now, but are still growing. The organization is not even a year old yet, so we're still building up. We want to look for partners, people who are already doing similar things as we are. We want to be able to engage civic organizations, political parties, government, because it's a partnership. It's not like we're looking to be the sole organization pushing for Afrocentric ideas. We want to be able to complement others, and others complement us, until we have people who believe that Africans can do better than what the world always thinks of us. I wish to see a Zimbabwe where everybody has equality of opportunity, where people have access to resources to unlock their full potential, where everybody is respected, irrespective of where they come from, whether you're coming from a poor family or a rich family, or you're coming from Matabeleland or Binga. Zimbabwe, where we are there to talk about ideas rather than talk about people. Where in Zimbabwe, where everybody wants to succeed, and they have the support structures of people around them who also want to complement their efforts. I think, like I said earlier, we've been stuck in the politics, and I think there should be a time for politics, which is the time, election time, not to be in election mood non-stop. We have to, at some point, come together as Zimbabweans and say, listen, we've got this problem. Let's sit down, talk about them, and then what do we decide? What is the way forward for all of us? What is our common areas of interest, and have a template that we can all work on, even if we can differ politically. But when it comes to nationally, we are all working in the same direction. It's heartbreaking when you see our politics of people pulling in different directions. I do appreciate that people are tired, um, because obviously we've had some very serious failures in the past. But we need to, at some point, accept that and learn from those mistakes and forge forward, because the toxicity in our politics is just unhealthy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm back in Zimbabwe and I want to contribute to a better Zimbabwe. I don't want to be fighting anyone. I want to work with everyone, and I want our leaders. I don't want to be forming another party and saying, okay, I'm the one who should lead Zimbabwe. I want to join what's there and say, okay, yes, we differ here and there, but let's work together on this one. Our education is in trouble. Our health systems are in trouble. What do we do? How can we help each other? Yeah. So I just want to say Zimbabweans work together and they can celebrate their successes together. Thank you. Thank you once more for giving me the opportunity to share my personal journey and that of my family. And I have enjoyed being on the platform even before this interview. And it's been very informative, and I've learned a lot of things from the different perspectives. I look forward to learning more from you and working with some of you as we try to find answers to a way forward for our beloved country. Thank you, Tendai and team.